What's up, air gunners? Today's topic is air guns and durability, them breaking, because it's my sneaky suspicion that they are breaking more, and there's a few reasons for that. And so this video is, if you're looking at a new air gun, you might want to check some of the durability ratings or make sure it matches the hatch, which we'll get into, or the fact that they're, the 5 concepts I want to talk about is the complexity. So you can probably get no further difference between this Day-State Delta Wolf, which is a computer-generated, all-computer electronic gun, and this Air Force Condor. This is all mechanical. This rifle has maybe 4 O-rings. I'm assuming this probably has over 30. I think now the FX Impact has over 30 O-rings, or over 50 actually, and that's up from the FX Crown, which my understanding has like 10 O-rings, but it's not a good indicator. But just know the more complex air rifle you have, you can kind of do a little sneaky suspicion, because how much has the platform really been tested out over 5 or 10 years? And there's some other things that go along with that. But just know, first off, you're looking at the durability of a rifle. Look how complex it is, how many moving parts they have. Look at the platform in itself. And the second part is power. A lot of these air rifles started out in 177, and they've been migrated to 22 cal. Then they migrated to 30 or 25 and 30. Now 357. But here's the thing, and it always reminds me of the story of Glock, the Glock 19, or I think it was the 9mm, where a lot of police departments wanted a more powerful handgun. So Glock, seeing the dollar signs, just basically modified their 9mm platform and put on a 40 cal barrel and kept the parts the same. But what they realized in the places, the departments that were using these guns a lot, they were breaking all over the place, and they were going in for service. And that's one of the things to consider with this. These platforms that started out in 177 or 22, if you get a 357, it could be shooting anywhere from 150 to 200 foot-pounds, where your 177 is, maybe 10 foot-pounds. So all these O-rings and all these different parts are going through the stress that they might not had a chance to really work out. Have they upgraded the parts and the pieces to make the migration so it's durable? The other thing you got to take into consideration is the fact that some of these guns are really built for high power and single shots, and they're not going through as many rounds as they are some of the newer rifles, like some of these semi-automatics where they're 357, or they have a magazine of 18 rounds. You're just not going to get the same amount of rounds through, let's say, an Air Force Texan as you are an FX Impact, where you have 18 rounds there and you could just go through it multiple times. That's 160 foot-pounds of energy continuously being cycled through your gun, where it takes you probably a half hour to do the same thing you could do in 10 minutes with one of these, I guess, higher-end rifles, not these single shots and that. The last piece is modifications. This is one of the things that a lot of people don't consider is, you put on a longer barrel, you're creating more, I guess, stress on the gun, or if you put on a bigger valve, or you do something where you're, harder springs, you're modifying the rifle. Again, a lot of this stuff hasn't been tested. A lot of these things haven't been thoroughly tested in the environments that you're actually running your rifle in. That's one of the things, some of these are made in Sweden, some of these are made in Germany, China, wherever, and they have, a set amount of weather conditions. So if you look at it this way, what conditions are you running it under? So that's the first 3, the platform itself, how complicated it is, and the modifications that are being put on the rifle. Is it really built for that? Because it's kind of like, putting in a really fast engine in your car, but you don't upgrade your transmission, your drivetrain, or any of that. You keep it the same, and you start burning out gears, you start burning out transmissions and that. So all this kind of hits forward is when you're actually using it in the environment. You start using it in the environment that it hasn't been tested in, and some of the things I would say you need to treat a lot of air guns like you treat, camera lenses and camera equipment, which they tell you, even if you're using the best lenses, tens of thousands of dollars, you don't want to bring it in from the cold. If you've had a -5 below, you bring it in right away, you get condensation. Well, it's the same thing. If you have tons of O-rings, tons of parts, What's the condensation happening in your gun when you bring it in from the ice cold weather into 70 degrees with like 60% humidity? What happens? Yeah, obviously, it's going to get some condensation. What happens with the gun? Are you getting rust in certain parts? Are you getting rust in the barrel, rust in the valves? And is it kind of modifying the springs at all and kind of losing your tune? So this isn't simply just the cold, it's the heat. And I kind of remember when the FX Independence was released, that was a multi-pump air rifle where you can get multiple shots out of pumping the air rifle, and you're independent of any of the I guess the tanks and that kind of extra gear, right? But people in Florida were having issues. My understanding is it was bringing in a lot of water. Florida's very humid, Georgia, these areas, very humid, and they were bringing in water into the gun. So it was the excessive heat, excessive, I guess, humidity that they're bringing in, and it was affecting it. And that kind of comes down to the last piece, and that's, your environment. So if you're looking for an air gun and you're kind of new to it, just realize that if you ask someone, let's say Utah Air Guns or Pyramid Air, and you want a rifle, and they're more than likely, what do you want to do with it? How do you want to shoot it? They don't really know your condition or your position and your environment. If you look here in Nebraska, in the middle of winter, we have 0 motorcycles, very few sports cars, unlike probably California. And that's kind of one of those things that you just need to take into consideration what type of gun you're going to run. This to me is the Air Force Talon is a truck gun. This is kind of a bench rest gun. You could use it for some hunting out in the field, but if it was going in Nebraska sand hills where there's a lot of dirt, a lot of sand, and in some really nasty conditions, I don't feel very comfortable taking a $3,000 air gun in that environment or keep it in the back of my truck and beating it around, where you can take, $500, $600 air gun and use it that way. So that's the things to, consider when you're going to purchase an air rifle or you're going to maintain it, is how are you going to use it to your specific environment? Because there's cold, dust, humidity, heat. Keeping these things in a car that's 150 degrees in the summer, how's that affect it? A lot of this is common sense, guys, but overall, there's just no way of going about combating the environment if it's hunting season. Things are generally a little cooler or a little warmer with humidity. So that's it, guys. Comments, questions below, and hopefully I'll see you next week.